450!
Enemy forces have captured that zone.
Target destroyed!
Alright, so the Panzerjäger I, which translates to tank hunter, was the first German Panzerjäger to fight in World War II. It was basically a Panzer I Ausführung B with the turret removed and replaced by the Czech 4.7 cm anti-tank gun. The Panzerjäger I was designed to counter French heavy tanks because the usual German Pak 36 with its 3.7 cm gun was not good enough to do so by itself, and some other reasons as well. Even before the Second World War, Heinz Guderian had predicted the need for highly mobile self-propelled anti-tank vehicles, later known as Panzerjäger or Jagdpanzer, translating to tank destroyer or tank hunter. Hello and welcome to the Bobi and Tanks YouTube channel and enjoy this video. History. The main anti-tank gun used by the Wehrmacht during the 1939 invasion of Poland was the 3.7 cm Pak 36. This gun did a good job at destroying Polish tanks and other armored vehicles, as they tended to be lightly armored. Its mobility and small size also came in handy in combat situations. But there was one issue. The penetration power of the Pak 36 was enough to fight the Polish army, but for an invasion of the West, particularly France, a more powerful gun was needed. There was one option to fulfill that need, which was the 5 cm Pak 38, but it was still in the development phase and would not get to the troops in time, so the Germans had to come up with something else. Luckily for the Germans, they invaded and took over Czechoslovakia. There, they came into possession of a pretty large number of Czech 47mm anti-tank guns. Now, the idea of a tank hunter came from the typical anti-tank guns. Anti-tank guns were good and useful. They were light, so that trucks and infantrymen and even horses could transport them relatively easily. But there were also a few issues with it. For panzer units, for example, towed anti-tank guns presented a problem to transport because of frequent position changes and advancements on the battlefield. Wheeled trucks had issues driving off-road even without a towed gun, and half-tracks would have solved the issue, but they were never available in large enough quantities to make a difference. When in combat a target was spotted, the Pak would have to be disconnected from the towing vehicle first and moved by the crew to a designated firing position until they could finally engage the target, if the target hadn't engaged them first by then. This process ate up valuable time. On top of that, during combat the Pak was an easy target because it only had limited protection at the front. And because of all these problems, they came up with a solution. They decided that mounting a powerful Pak on a mobile chassis would make more sense because it could follow the fast-moving units and quickly change its position to engage enemy targets without the long process I presented before. Now, coming back to the captured Czech 47mm guns, the German Army Ordnance Department made a proposal to mount the numerous new Czech 47mm guns on modified Panzer I Ausführung B chassis. The wisdom behind this proposal was that they already had the powerful guns and the Panzer I was already obsolete to fight on the front lines on its own. It also had a powerful engine and was longer than the Ausführung A. They could have also used the Panzer II or Panzer III chassis, but they decided not to because these tanks were still useful and effective on the front lines and were deemed too valuable and scarce for such a modification. Now let's talk about the Panzerjäger I's development and production history. Now, as mentioned, the Panzerjäger I was based on the Panzer I chassis. What the Germans did there was to remove the turret of the Panzer I as well as the wheels, axle and trails. After that, they added a fixed gun shield to protect the armament and the crew from the front. Notably, this protection was on the front and on the sides, but the crew still wasn't completely safe from the battlefield chaos, as you can see here. The company that was chosen to undertake this modification was Alket from Berlin. During late 1939 and early 1940, Alket made the first drawings of the future Panzerjäger. Very soon, a prototype was built and tested. The conversion proved to be feasible and easy to construct. This prototype was demonstrated to the Mustache Man himself in February 1940. After this demonstration, an official order was given. These vehicles had to be ready by May 1940. The Panzerjäger I usually carried 74 anti-tank shells and 10 high explosive shells to deliver some bombastic presence to the infantry. Production went as follows. 202 Panzerjäger Is were totally produced. 142 of them were produced in 1940 by Alket, a major manufacturer of armored vehicles for the Wehrmacht during World War II. 60 more Panzerjäger Is were produced by Klöckner Humboldt Deutz, which is an engineering company. Now let's look at some basic specifications of the Panzerjäger I before we jump right into its combat history. The Panzerjäger I had a crew of 3, a driver who was also the radio operator, a commander who also served as a gunner, and a loader who, well, just loaded the gun. The Panzerjäger was powered by a 3.8 liters 6-cylinder Maybach engine delivering 100 horsepower. It weighed 6.4 tons, which gave it a power-to-weight ratio of 15.6 horsepower per ton. It had a top speed of 40 km an hour, which is 25 miles per hour. The gun can elevate to +12 degrees and depress to -8 degrees. Already more gun depression than every Soviet tank I've seen. Looking at the interesting stuff now, the Panzerjäger I was armed with a Czech 4.7 cm Skoda anti-tank gun. It was an effective weapon for its time with a range of 1.5 kilometers and a armor penetration of 48 to 59 mm at 500 meters. The 4.7 cm Pak could effectively destroy most tanks of the time at long distances, with the exception of the British Matilda, French B1 and later the T-34 and the KV-1. There was no secondary armament integrated in the tank except an MP40 which the crew could use. The tank hunter had 13 mm of armor on the front, side and rear hull and the front, side and rear superstructure, as well as 14.5 mm of armor on the front gun shield and none on the rear. To protect the crew, the first series of Panzerjäger I vehicles featured a 5-sided armored compartment with a 14.5 mm thick armored plate. This compartment was bolted to the vehicle hull, making repairs easier. The second series added 2 more armored plates, one on each side, enhancing protection from more directions. However, the armor was still thin and provided limited protection from the front and sides, which is why the crew members wore steel helmets. In an attempt to increase armor protection, some crews added spare tracks to the vehicle's front armor. Combat history. The Panzerjäger I was organized into companies of 9 vehicles with 3 companies per battalion. Throughout the war, they were only used by independent anti-tank battalions with 2 exceptions after the Balkans campaign. One company was assigned to the SS Brigade Leibstandarte, der SS Adolf Hitler, and another company was assigned to the 900th Motorized Training Brigade in preparation for Operation Barbarossa. During the Battle of France, there were 4 Panzerjäger detachments which had 99 vehicles. Although only one of them participated in the campaign from the beginning. The other ones were still in training for a few days after the campaign began, but they were later sent to the front after their training finished. During fighting, the Panzerjäger proved to be effective. Its strongest point was the 4.7 cm gun, which could penetrate the armor of most Allied tanks from 500 to 600 meters away. Besides that, it often used to attack machine gun nests and other similar enemy positions. According to some reports, it was also great at tearing apart houses and whole buildings. But with the good comes also the bad. In France, there were numerous flaws noted. One issue was that the Panzer I chassis of the Panzerjäger often malfunctioned and had suspension problems. The engine also often overheated. To avoid this, especially on hotter days, the tank hunter could not exceed speeds higher than 30 km an hour with a half-an-hour pause every 20 to 30 km. This is not effective in war, especially during a blitzkrieg. Several Panzerjägers were used during Operation Barbarossa, in which Germany invaded the Soviet Union. But because of unexpectedly large Soviet resistance, a lot of them were destroyed early on. During this campaign, the Panzerjäger was also used to support the infantry and therefore operated in a very similar way to the Sturmgeschütz III. The commanders of the Panzerjägers were against this use in battle because of the light armor. But the higher-ups, they didn't really care about that. They deployed the Panzerjäger for infantry support. A lot. Now, it did a good job against enemy positions which were not protected by artillery or anti-tank guns. But if the enemies had those weapons, well, the attack became more like a suicide mission for the crew. Another issue during Operation Barbarossa was that the Panzerjäger had no secondary armament like an MG-34 for example. This led to it being very vulnerable to enemy infantry attacks, especially because of its open top. The Panzerjäger was not used the way it should have been used. As the name says, it was primarily supposed to fight enemy tanks, not infantry. However, by just looking at the ammo usage of it, we can very easily see how it has actually been used in battle. From the start of Operation Barbarossa to the end of 1941, the Panzerjäger I units fired a total of 21,103 armor-piercing rounds and 31,195 high-explosive rounds of ammunition. This tells you everything you need to know. There were 27 Panzerjäger Is within the Panzerjäger Detachment 605 in northern Africa. They arrived in Tripoli, Libya between March 18 and 21, 1941. In September 1941, 5 replacements were sent, but only 3 arrived on October 2nd as the others were lost when the freighter Castellan was sunk by the submarine HMS Perseus. At the start of the British Operation Crusader, the battalion was at full strength but lost 13 vehicles in the battles. 4 more replacements arrived in January 1942, bringing the total to 17 at the beginning of the Battle of Gazala. Despite receiving 3 more vehicles from September to October 1942, the battalion had only 11 by the start of the Second Battle of El Alamein. The battalion received its last 2 replacements in November 1942. Anyways, that was all I had to say for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think I said anything that is not right or you think I should have added any additional information to this video, please let me know in the comments and share your knowledge. Besides that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.
Target damaged. Enemy forces have captured a zone. Target destroyed.